Steve, I want to move on to one other little college deal. Is there's a lot of people seeming to take a lot of joy in Dan Lanning
Hmm.
and Oregon getting beat up. Jemele Hill at the top of the list. Could we call it the Jemele? Yeah. Maybe Dan Lanning should try chasing clicks as a new strategy. And I don't shouldn't make too much of it. But then Shady McCoy was on their podcast, ripping Dan Lanning as well, bringing Dion into this, and I mean it's like these Dion groupies just let it go. But here's what I think: why I think they missed the mark here is like what that game Indiana Oregon was about is like, man, Indiana and Kirk Cignetti
It was good.
are amazing. It's not about Dan Lanning sucks and got exposed again. I just don't think that's not what I took away. I was like, this Cignetti and this Indiana team are in the conversation for an all time great college team. Isn't that the proper takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if they're up there with 2019 LSU and 2001 Miami, 95 Nebraska. That was another monster team that I really enjoyed. But isn't this another version of what about Favre? I'm watching this game, and when it was 21-7, I got the sense that this is Indiana's night. They've dominated the game. They're the better team, and 90% of their home crowd, basically. You know, the last thing I was thinking of was Coach Prime. In fact, to be honest, Coach, Jason, I don't think Deion Sanders was even thinking about any of this during this game. I really don't. Here's the reality. Oregon would beat Colorado 10 out of 10 times if they played. They would. And when they played 2 years ago, Oregon let up on them and blew them out. I don't understand what that pregame comment has to do with the price of tea in China today.
It's amazing. Lanning was talking to his team, trying to get them hyped. They're acting like he said something in a press conference disrespectful of Dion and Colorado. It the level of just this Dion cult and what I don't understand what the rewards are for it. I don't if there I guess there's clicks and traction in it. But yeah, there's no way although I do think Dion probably did take some enjoyment out of seeing Dan Lanning get the brakes beat off of him. But I don't blame Dion for that. If Dion were thinking these thoughts, it would seem that's kind of appropriate. Dan Lanning beat him up. Now he's enjoying Dan Lanning getting beat up. But Jemele Hill, Shady McCoy, caring about this and thinking about this, and I think Dan Lanning will be just fine. I still think he's a great coach. I just think he ran into a buzzsaw. I think I read today, the Nebraska quarterback Raiola is transferring to Oregon. I think Oregon's going to be just fine, and I wasn't planning on talking to you about it, but it is kind of an odd decision because
Yeah.
Dante Moore hasn't even decided if he's
Well,
leaving yet. What do you
keep in
think
mind,
about that?
Jason, Dante Moore went to UCLA for about 15 minutes, right? He made the decision to say, oh, you know what, I got to get to a better program. And he went to Oregon knowing that they had Dylan Gabriel and he redshirted like he should have done. Best thing for him. I think a lot of these quarterbacks, like DJ Lagway, I think wherever he goes, he should redshirt. It's not going to happen. I realize that. If Dylan Raiola, who has this strange fascination with Patrick Mahomes, I think he needs a year to reset, be his own guy, kind of be in the background, and then just be a teammate. And then get that year, because he never redshirted at Nebraska. He played immediately as a true freshman. So there is a history of Oregon getting big name quarterbacks and actually having them agree to sit out a season.
All right, Steve. Enough with the NFL. Let's get to the granddaddy of them all, the thing that I'm sure you're most excited about, the college football playoffs. Two very fascinating stories. There, the greatness of Indiana is one story, and the potential greatness of Miami is the other story. I'm going to I'm go a little bit different here, Luke. I want to start with Miami and just this may be a really great team that just has a discipline problem that cost them 2 games, and I could see Miami giving Indiana a hell of a game, if not winning the game, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot. You say what?
I don't disagree. Jason, the game that I saw live, I saw a very spirited team who kept getting in its own way. And the thing that's maddening is that there was one time Miami had like 34 offensive plays to their 7. And you're thinking, man, we must be winning 17-0 at 7-3. Miami has to come home more. And Carson Beck, for as good as he was, Jason, in the last 2 drives, he missed a lot of throws in the first half. One of them, a seam shot to Malachi Tony that should have been a walk-in touchdown. If you're going to beat a well-coached, disciplined Indiana squad, when you dial up a play and it's there to be taken, you cannot leave it on the table. I do not disagree with you. Oftentimes Miami's biggest opponent is themselves.
The obviously Indiana's defensive coordinator is a former Ball State football player, and he played on the Ball State teams that were great and that I was closely connected to, the 2007, 2008 Ball State team. And the Dante Love kid, who's like my adopted son, was on those teams, friends with him. Anyway, I don't want to go too far with this by saying that but I think I know Indiana was very confident that they would beat Oregon. I know I picked Oregon and I'm an idiot for it, but have heard that they were very confident that they knew they could beat Oregon. I think they were very confident they could beat Alabama. I think there's a level of respect for Miami that exceeds what they had for Oregon. And again, it's not that they didn't respect Oregon, but I think everybody knows, like, hey, man, Miami's a really great football team. Offensive line, defensive line, a running back, just players everywhere. Probably more talented than Indiana, but it just comes down to that Miami culture that you fell in love with.
Well,
it's
wait
a bit of an undisciplined culture. The Miami team, it's an undisciplined culture. You got Michael Irvin running around on the sidelines, still doing the same thing he was doing in the 1980s. Miami may be a great team, and we may find that out a week from today.
I will just say I completely disagree with that. Miami they were bad sportsmen and entertainers, which I loved. But to say that they were undisciplined in that era, they were flashy, they were showboats. But to play the style of play and the systems that they ran, they had to have a higher football IQ. You couldn't run the stuff they did by being undisciplined. And Jimmy Johnson once said, everything you see, I allow. I will curb that. Now, did it get out of hand with Dennis Erickson? You can make that argument. But the games that Miami lost in that era were due to turnovers. Now, I don't know if that's undisciplined or just being sloppy. So when I look at Miami, the problem is, it's not a problem. With the way Mario likes to play, more slow and methodical, so he put a lot of plays on, right? Problem is when you limit the drives, though, Jason, just mathematically, and you don't play at a quick tempo, that means every drive you have to get home. There's more of an importance on it. If you have like 15 drives a game and you're going tempo, one mistake or a drive or two that ends in a turnover, it's not going to hurt you as much. So that is a factor. But to say that Miami in that era, were they wild? Yes. Were they were they beyond the normal pale of celebrating? Yes. But I never looked at them as undisciplined. I don't think you could have won that many games against that many great teams by being undisciplined.
Ole Miss game, I saw 2 cheap shots by defenders, both flagged. You're telling me that's not reminiscent of the old Miami football teams?
Wait, one of them, you're talking about one of them was a targeting, right?
One was target. I think it was 2 late hits.
One was a late hit. Okay, so on one drive, there was the Xavier Lucas targeting. 20 years ago, that's called you got jacked up in a great hit.
We're not 20 years ago. It's
okay,
it's
but
2026 last I checked.
That looked like a clean football hit to me. Okay? The David Blay late hit, that's a hit. That's a penalty. You'll get no argument. That's a big, tired guy that just kind of fell. Not going to argue with that. But and when you start talking about targeting being who are you anymore, Jason? My God, you
It's
want
not.
flags on these
They
guys?
had two unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, if I remember
You
right.
mean personal fouls? You mean personal
Personal
fouls?
fouls. Yeah.
One of them was legit. The other one, I don't know about that call.
Here's my bottom line question: is Miami more talented than Indiana?
Um, Maybe. As I told you before, I asked someone that works in an NFL team, is Ohio State the most talented team in terms of NFL premium draft choice? Let's say top 75. And they said yes. And they told me right after them was like Georgia, Oregon, Miami, and Indiana. Jason, the most overstated thing that I've heard in this playoff or this perception is that Indiana's a bunch of gritty, gutty, well coached overachievers, right? Even if you take away Fernando Mendoza, that team has a pretty good amount of NFL talent on both sides of the ball.